What's up, mediums? Welcome to The Writer's Journey. I'm your host, Lauren Moore, and with me is Kayleen Williams. We're two authors on a journey to learn more about writing success, so thanks for joining us tonight. And tonight we've got very special guests, two of them. One is our very own Josh Hayes. He's a science fiction and fantasy author. He's published in a number of anthologies, including Nathan Heisted's Exploration series. He's written the Terra Nova Chronicles with Richard Fox. And he has a book coming out with Galaxy's Edge soon, Stryker's War, and it is excellent. We also tonight have Rhett Bruno, best-selling author and co-founder of Aethon Books, a big science fiction publishing house, which we love, and it rolls out hot new sellers each and every month. So tonight, we're talking about managing multiple projects at the same time, and we've got two authors who do that day in, day out. That's their bread and butter. So thanks for coming on the show tonight, guys.
Yes.
Hey, guys.
I love coming on this show because I get to be a guest on this one. And so I can just sit back and relax, and I don't have to pay attention to nothing.
You shouldn't have a big keystroke logo behind you when you're a guest. It's cheating.
Oh, yeah. I can't get rid of it, man. It's everywhere.
You're kind of like the best guest to have on the show because this thing here is your baby, and now you get to just enjoy it. Like,
that's right.
Hang out and play and not have to be dad. You can just have fun.
Yes, exactly. It's like I got toddlers playing in the yard, but then the toddlers go away. I get to go to my friend's house and hang out. I don't have any toddlers in the yard.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
So tonight, talking about managing multiple projects in the same time. This is an episode that's been requested by the fans a couple times. So we know that there are a lot of people out there who are thinking of juggling multiple projects. Maybe they're working on one right now. Maybe they've got one in their head, but they want to make their writing career a success. And one of the paths forward for a lot of people is to consider collaborations. So we're going to talk about how is that possible to even think of multiple storylines at the same time and to be excited about different projects that you have going on at the same time. So first, before we get into a topic, let's just hear what are these different projects that you guys are juggling. And Josh, we'll start with you, hear about your current projects that you've got on your desk right now. And then Rhett, we'd love to hear what projects are going on with you and with Aethon Books.
Okay.
So let's see. In the last 4 days, I turned in a ghostwriting novel that was about 86,000 words. I turned in the contract on that. I am about 76,000 words into Terra Nova 4 Hale's War. And I should have that done, probably about a week and a half to 2 weeks. I finished a short story with Casey Azell last Saturday, like 2 hours before the deadline, and sent that off. And I just actually today wrote the first words on, Rhett will like this. I wrote the first words on Echoes of Valor this morning. Yeah. Yeah. I have the outline pretty much all done. But I wrote the actual first draft words this morning on that. And then I have been I'm actually planning out two separate novel projects at the same time. So I'm planning I've got a collaboration starting with Jeff Chaney in a couple weeks in his Renegade universe. Tentatively, we're calling it Ashland, but I'm not sure if that's going to stick. But right now, that's what it is. And then I've got another super secret project that will be super secret until I get the contract. I haven't got the contract for it yet. Once I get the contract for it, then I'll be able to talk about it. But it's really, really cool collaboration for like the end of this year, next year. So that'll be fun.
Gotta love super secrets.
It's been a while since I've had a super secret project. Like,
yeah, that's
I
not fair.
I know. I had, what was the last one I had was Stryker's War, actually, was the last super secret project I had. And that was a year and a half ago, probably.
Yeah. And we're kind of working on a collaboration too. Is it super secret?
What? Who? What?
you and I, we're kind of working on a collaboration too.
Oh,
right?
no, that is not super secret at all. Yes. And I'm the slacking partner in this collaboration. But yes, we are.
It is a nonfiction book that we're writing for you guys.
That's right. Yes. I think it's going to be a really cool book. Lauren, she has come to us twice now with the idea to do it. And we started working on it last year before 20 books. And it kind of got put on hold with a whole bunch of other stuff that we had going on. But now we're kind of hitting it again, and hitting multiple topics, and kind of stretching the. It's going to be like an all-encompassing book with several chapters where we're going to get experts in what we're dealing with the chapters to give us different blurbs and different of their own stories to kind of build the book up and get people excited and do different things. So I think it's going to be fun. Lauren, you're doing a fantastic job. I mean, she sends me links every day and I'm like, holy crap, you're doing a lot of work. And for those of you that don't know, Lauren has been with us before she started doing the hosting on the Writer's Journey. She did show notes for us for like 2 seasons. In the background, and I would always have the show note paper up and I'd see just Lauren just viciously typing as we're talking, and I'm like, holy crap, that's very cool. So she's got a lot of good information that she's pulling. And actually KR McClellan asks, and I'll touch it, I haven't touched on a lot. The near future anthology is coming. It is in the works, and we've said it a couple of times. We had a fairly significant real life holdup that really put the anthology not on the back burner, but just on hold for it was a couple weeks where no work got done on it at all, and it was a pretty significant thing. But we're past that now, and we're just kind of playing catch up with it. So I do apologize that it hasn't come out yet, but it is in the works. We are getting stories back from the authors, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to put things together and get it out. So it is coming. So thanks all the authors for being patient.
Awesome. And Rhett, what's up with you?
So I'm always doing a lot. So I guess I'll start with what I'm writing right now is we're working on book 5 in the Buried Goddess saga. Me and Jamie Castle, who's Steve Ballard. And again, I know Josh does a lot of collaborations, and they're great because they're fast. But me and Steve decided to make like huge epic fantasy books, so it's not turning out much faster. It's just they just keep getting bigger, which is cool. On the side, have been this week re-editing and like revising a project that's not published yet, which isn't really with anyone. It's just kind of sitting with my agent that I can't say anything about yet, but that's been fun. I just finished that today. And then, on the business side, Aethon Books is really just taking off, and there's always a ton of work and submissions, and some days I don't have any work, and then other days I'm putting out like 13 fires. So things change daily. I mean, we have some cool stuff coming up. May is pretty slow, and then June we have unfortunately, 8 releases of books all stacked into June, and May we just have a military sci-fi series from Rick Partlow coming out that I edited. And yeah, I think that's it for May. And then June we have a series from Devin Ford, Matt Langley, Matt Gilbert. There's a lot of stuff is starting in June, so it's getting really busy, which is exciting. It's just a ton of work to juggle.
And then in July you have another book coming out too. In July, don't you?
Yeah, in July we have a book from that man who's not wearing pants.
I am wearing shorts. I just figured it
yeah, we're real excited about that. It still seems really far off, even though it's only like 2 months, but that's going to be a good one.
So you guys know all about having multiple projects going, different pots simmering at the same time. And I just writing one book, you've got lots of different characters and conflicts and storylines simmering at the same time. Just to think that someone could write 2 or 3 books at the same time, editing another project. It just blows my mind. So we're going to get into how exactly does one do that. So our first question up, Kayleen, you want to ask it?
Why do you guys put yourself through this torture? That's our first question. What is driving you to be like, you know what? That really long, super epic fantasy, that's not enough. I need to start a whole new one. Or like with Josh, with your ghost writings and your super secret projects and your sort of starting storylines. What's with that?
So it's always I've always been kind of a multitasker. I've always been kind of the sort of person that can just see a whole bunch of different things at the same time. And so like when I read books, I have a Kindle next to my bed that I'll read when I go to bed, and I'll read a different story on that I'm listening to on my Audible app on my phone. I do two different books at the same time, reading and listening. And when I write, I always have all my stories in my head at the same time. The depth of those stories might not be there while I'm thinking about them in my head, but the overall, the big picture is usually there most of the time. And so I'll have high points of, like, for instance, Terra Nova 4, I'll have high points where I'll think of, oh yes, I can do that to this scene, and I'll make a note on my phone. Or if I think of, it's like, so the Jeff Chaney book, I have a number of scenes that I want to do. And so if I think of, at some time I'm thinking of that book and I think of that scene, I'll write that note down. But I mean, you guys know I'm a pretty big outliner. And so when I go to write a project, like in the morning, I'll get up at 5, I'll come down, my coffee's on, I'll open Scrivener, and I have notes for everything that I want to write. And so I don't really have to think about it. I can just sit down and kind of work through that day's draft and that day's information that I need to get down on the page. Sometimes it happens really well and really easily. Sometimes I know what I have to write and I just can't write a thing. Like I don't know what happens. It's very dumb. But when I was doing the ghostwriting thing, what I would do is I would do the ghostwriting in the morning, and I'd get up, and from like 5 to 7:30, I would do the ghostwriting. So what I'm going to do now, since that's over, is I'm going to do my Terra Nova stuff in the morning and until I get what I need for that day to make my deadline. And then I'll stop, go do breakfast with the kids or whatever, get them to daycare or get them to school, and then come back and for the rest of the day work on the other project. And so I have like a natural break where I have one project here, and then I have a natural break during the day. And then when I come back, my mind just kind of cycles into the next thing. And then I do that. And it kind of, with short stories, I just do them in chunks. Like if I've got a couple hours in a day that I'm not really feeling the majority of the other thing that I'm working on, I'll just sit down and write on the short story. Or in the case of this last one, Casey will call me and she says, "Hey, we've got like 3 hours to get this story in. Can we please work on it?" And then we sit down on Skype and on Google Drive and we'll just start pounding out the story. And we did like 3,000 words in like 2 hours. So it was.
So we got a couple questions in the chat. So I'm gonna segue with, it definitely sounds like, you find those exact times and you dedicate just that time. So you're very, I shouldn't say segmented, but rigid, I guess, in that sense. But Shadow, the illustrator, wants to know, how do you decide what gets the most focus when you have multiple projects? And then I'm going to tag this other one on here. Lisa Richmond is asking, don't you find it to be kind of a bit of a mental palate cleanser, especially when you hit a mental block on one of them? Doing it that way, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no. So for the first half of the question on where I focus my attention, it really kind of depends on the projects that I'm working on. So like when I was doing the ghostwriting project, for that specific project, I had to get those words done before I got the other words done because they were due at a specific time, and the project was due at a specific date, and I needed to get it done. So if I was low And I have a spreadsheet too that I track all my stuff from, and I separate out my word counts for my words, the Josh A words, and ghostwriting words. And so I
deadlines
know
definitely play a factor.
Yeah. So I know, like, okay, this week I break it down by month, I break it down by day, but then I also break it down by months or by weeks in the month. And so I can see which weeks I'm short, which weeks I'm not short, and where I need to pick it up. And it gives me averages and totals for where I need to put the words at. So if I'm 15,000 words short on a ghostwrite book, then I know that I need to focus my words on the ghostwrite book, and I can start that first. At the first, the thing I write first is typically where I get most of my words at during this. Really weird. I can do like 3,000 words from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., I get like 500 words. I don't even know why that happens. It just, sometimes it happens like that. And my mind has a hard time being like turning the creativity back on, because I've been so long just creative in the morning that it's like I have to train my mind now again to do that creative process all day.
Yeah, Lisa's question about the mental palate cleanser, it reminded me of a tip about procrastination for procrastinators, that you take two things that you really need to do, but you tend to procrastinate on them. Kind of the more important they are, the more you tend to procrastinate on them. I don't know why it works like that. And then you pit them against each other. So, Lauren, if you don't get this manuscript done and the words aren't coming there, then you are going to work on that one. And I guess that can kind of work until you get 1,500 words or 15,000 words or whatever it is behind on your ghostwriting goal. And then now what are you going to do?
Right. Well, and the cool thing about the ghostwrite book is the ghostwrite book was a present day thriller. And so it was a present day thriller. And then the Terra Nova is obviously military sci-fi, far future sci-fi. So there's a very distinct difference in not only writing style, but technology and characters and all that. So it wasn't like I'm writing 2 mil sci-fi books at the same time, where I've got to think of like multiple different made up weapons and multiple different, like all these made up things. One story was like set in present day Earth, so I didn't have to make up anything. I could just Google it and say, what street do I need? And I could Google. And a lot of my time on the Ghostwrite project was actually mapping out roads in these cities. So when I wrote it, people were like, that's not a road. But yeah.
Well, what about you, Rhett? How do you decide on the things we were just talking about? See, I told you, my brain just goes.
I mean,
and how to think.
As far as deciding, a lot of times it's easy. It just, if there's a deadline ahead of it, you do that one first. And I mean, that's the same thing with running our publishing house as writing. Like, we have to get the things that are coming out sooner done quicker. That's obviously the easiest way to segment things out and figure it out. Sometimes you don't have set deadlines, which makes it tougher. So, I mean, in that case, it's usually which one is going to earn the most. Because again, I know me and Josh both quit our jobs. So that's a big thing. Is writing is great, but we also have to write and publish enough to be able to keep writing and publishing.
Yeah.
And the third thing, and again, is like Josh, I'm very much a multitasker. I always have been ever since like high school. I was doing homework for something else while I was in the class. Like, I'm always doing 2 things at once, which is why I knew I couldn't just stay at home writing all day anyway. I need kind of other stuff to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big part of why I'm putting myself through this. To answer Caitlin's earlier question, just because I have to do stuff. Otherwise, I kind of will get frustrated just writing all day.
No, you're not just juggling plots and characters and different manuscripts. Although, Josh, I want to get back to you and ask you about like your Bibles and worlds and how you keep that separated. But Rhett, you are also juggling your production team, your editors, your cover designers, your formatters, and you probably have a lot of deadlines for all these different things. Do you have a program you use or some way to organize your company to manage the workflow, to make sure each person gets their part of the manuscript on time and they're getting their piece of the puzzle done on time?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I've always multitasked and always been really unorganized. And I you know, and I think that Steve, who runs Aethon with me, is sort of the same way, probably not as bad as me. I don't even outline. Like, I do everything the same as Josh, but I don't outline. I actually outline in my head, so I kind of just remember it, but I don't really write more than notes. So it can be hard to keep everything straight. I mean, what we have is basically a Google Docs where we list everything we have and the release dates you want to keep. And at a certain point, that's all we really need to make sure we stay on top of. And we try to fill it out with which editor did what and what phase everything is in. But once you have that release date, you know what you're working towards. And we kind of, right now at least, aren't overwhelmed enough that we would forget those things. We kind of know what needs to be worked on first. And then another tool I use, which is stupid. I mean, I use Microsoft Word. I'm pretty manual with how I write and take notes. I use Google Gmail drafts a lot. I mean, if you go into our email server, the drafts basically have all of our promo plans and marketing plans for every release we're going to have. And, you know, and I mean, it's a simple tool, but it's all always right there, and easily I could turn it into an email to someone, stuff like that. So that's our real, honestly, main thing. And, you know, when it comes to writing, I'm more of a passion-based writer. I can't really just force myself to do a sprint. So usually if I'm doing, like, if it's me writing, I'm going to focus on the thing that I want to write at that time. So I'm usually not writing 2 books at the same time, but I'll be writing one and editing another, that kind of thing. So I'm still working on the books, but trying to do different phases of the books so I don't, again, cross wires or any of the stuff you would worry about.
That's good. That makes sense.
Okay, so we have Josh here, who very clearly super organizes everything. I mean, if you've seen his spreadsheets, those things are insane. Put in numbers, all these other numbers pop up, and there's color coordinated, and it's all crazy. And then you have Rhett, who's, it's in my head, dude. And there's so, you know, with that, you know, if something works for you, you know, go for it. If you want to go super crazy spreadsheet, do super crazy spreadsheet. If the idea of that makes you want to crawl under your bed, you know, go towards more Rhett's side, you know, surfs up.
I wouldn't say that I'm super organized, because there are some days where I'll get up and I'll have my Scrivener open for the project that I want to work on, and I sit and I look at it for a minute, and I'm like, I don't want to write on this at all, and then I'll do something else, and then I'll come back like 2 days later after not doing anything on that other project, going, I'm so stupid. It's like the procrastination thing. Like, if I just did the 1,500 words a day that I need to do on it, I wouldn't be behind. But then I skip 2 days and I'm like, oh, now I need to do 5,000 words. So now I'm screwed. And what I've started doing is leaving. I turn all my internet off. I leave my phone across the room so it's not right next to me, because I play Toon Blast a lot. and so I'll pick up my phone and just start playing Toon Blast for no reason at all. I'm like, no, stop playing Toon Blast. You got to write words.
Yeah, that was another question. Besides, and we'll get back to Bibles. It sounds like both of your jobs, gentlemen, take a lot of mental discipline in order to keep all the pieces together, whether it's your production team that you're figuring out and the different deadlines for the books your publishing house is putting out, or whether it's these different storylines and plots and 2 whole different worlds, 2 whole different genres that you're writing in, Josh. It takes a lot of mental discipline. Do you have any tips on how we can be more disciplined in our life, in our thinking? I'm sure social media and internet use comes into play here.
I mean, yeah, limit that, I guess. I think outlining is really great. I wish I was better at doing it. I mean, I can usually not get more than a page, and then I break it anyway. I think all the usual stuff helps. And then the most important thing I'll say, which goes kind of against this whole talk, is if you can't juggle 2 projects at the same time, then don't. You know,
Don't.
Yeah.
figure out what you can do. Like, I know I need to sort of work in an ADD style. Like, I'll write for 30 minutes and I need to do something else, then back to it. And whereas some people might want to be better at just writing 8 hours through the day kind of thing. And if they start balancing projects, the words and the stories will bleed into each other and stuff. So if you figure that out about yourself, there's nothing wrong with you. Like there's no secret answer for being able to write 2 books at the same time. If you can't do it, you can't do it. If you force yourself to do that, you're going to wind up with 2 mediocre books instead of 1 really great book.
Right. I completely agree. And, you know, sometimes it could be as simple as if you want to work on multiple projects, you know, pick a week and work on one of the projects. And then after that week, you stop and put that aside for a minute and work on another one. And, you know, what always happens is when you're having a conversation and somebody says something and you're like, oh, I was going to say something. God, what was I going to say? And you forget it. And then like 3 hours later, when you're clipping your toenails, you're like, oh, that's what I was going to say.
Gross,
And it
Josh.
comes to you. So yeah. But what, if you focus on your projects like that, where you work on one and then you go work on another one, sometimes I know one of the hangups that I get sometimes is when I'm drafting, even with the outline, I'll get to a point where I'm like, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to write this. I don't know how to start this chapter. Like I know what I want to do with the chapter, but I don't know how to start it. And that was one of the things that Jamie Davis talked about. Was last week? No, it was 2 weeks ago. Was it Jamie Davis? Was it? No, it was Andy Peliquin. Andy Peliquin said the way he starts his chapters, if he's having a problem, you know, figuring out how to set it up, they just walk into a bar. And I'm like, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? But sometimes you sit there and you're like, I don't know how to start it. Well, in that particular instance, you can just say he walks into a bar and then you continue on. Well, then when you go and you write the other project, a lot of times the answers to solve the other chapter that you're trying to work on will come to you as you're working on the different project. And so then I just make a note of it and I write it down, and then I can go back and plug it in later. So I that helps me a lot, kind of not get stuck and not get stuck for days at a time with problems in a manuscript, because you come up with a problem like that and you're like, it's a problem. I know it's a problem. I'm not going to fix it today. So I'll leave that problem alone and go do something else. And eventually, I've done it enough times where I've had those problems happen. You have the problems happen so many times in one novel, 4 novels, 3 shorts. Or how many short stories? How many short stories have I written where I got 3,000 words in? And I'm like, I only have 6,000 words to tell the story. How am I going to do this? And every story I get, I'll spend days looking at a page and not write. But then I just have to tell myself, it's going to fix itself. Just go do something else. Stop looking at the page. And so now I do that with problems in my manuscript. I know it's going to fix itself eventually. It's going to work out. So just go and do something else. Go write a short story or another project or even another chapter, and eventually you'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If you just have one project you're working on, you get to a scene where you get stuck, leave a note, move on to the next scene, and then come back to it later when you're ready. Sorry, Rhett, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's great advice, honestly. I like just did that. I started that book that I said I was editing. I started editing it in February, like doing sort of revision based on some dev edits and stuff. And I reached a point in the story where I was like, this just isn't working. And I kind of frustrated myself. And then I spent 2 months doing other stuff. And just as I was editing another guy's book, I saw something and I was like, oh, that's the answer right there. And kind of was able to revise the whole book in 2 weeks instead of agonizing forever, you know?
Oh, that's good. That's good. And that's that you're working on right now.
Well, now I finished. Now I did that for like 3 days. So now I'm back onto writing a fantasy book, which is a totally different genre. So like you said, juggling pretty majorly, but it's fun.
Okay, so before we get into more delicious questions and whatnots, we're going to jump into our show sponsor tonight. I'm kind of excited to read this one just because of the wordage. It's going to be epic. So our show sponsor tonight is The Knights of the Dawn King, The Setting of the Sun by Scott E. Stabler. The sun is setting over the realms of Unethia. The lands have forsaken the memory of their liege and drift toward an age of horrific enslavement. Prophetic utterances are reaching fulfillment, while rumors of war multiply in the north and whispers of the Black Horde arise from the south. the mysterious race of the firstborn gather to reclaim their ancient homeland, even as the ruling houses succumb to greed and power lust. Over it all, an ancient and dark force rises to crush the only adversary who would yet make a stand against the swelling tide of its evil designs. A once proud and honored knighthood, now fractured and held in little esteem, their allegiance to the true High King waning from within. Thrust into seemingly random circumstances and prevailed upon by harbingers of myth and legend, one man is driven to desperate measures to save his family, and in doing so, learns the true peril facing the lands. Hounded across mountain and realm by unspeakable evil and fettered by a burden of shame and guilt, he will come to understand true friendship, sacrifice, and courage, and will, in the end, discover his place within the decrees of a king. Utilizing a backdrop of tokenesque imagery, the Knights of the Dawn King, the setting of the sun leaves a compelling new take on the ageless struggle between light and darkness. Courage in the face of debilitating fear, bonds of companionship strengthened in a forge of hardship, and epic scenes of battle and chaos, all combined in this tale of sacrifice and love to compel the reader to ask one simple question: do I truly stand in allegiance to the king?
Yay!
Of Doom.
Of Doom. Wow. It was just the perfect story for epic storytelling.
Guy Anthony DeMarco says, I want her to read her. See, I messed it up. Just one more.
She read that whole intro.
I want her to read the audiobook of a 680-page novel. There you go.
Aw, thank you guys.
And then Jake Clifton says, I need Kayleen's voice on my answering phone. That's awesome.
Jake Clifton Slater, answer your phone.
Where are you guys seeing these comments?
Oh, it's in the live chat.
Did you not get live chat linkage stuffness?
I don't know. It's okay. I was just confused.
So one question we had for Josh is, Josh, I know that working on multiple projects and collaborating is part of how you went full time. So for a lot of us, that's what our mountain is.
Yes.
Underlay, a mountain is to go full time. So how did collaborations become a part of you being able to go full time and stay a writer?
So collaborations are really interesting because typically you're working with somebody who already has an established fan base, and so you're not guaranteed to make a crap ton of money, but you are guaranteed to make something more over than you would if you're just publishing yourself, because nobody knows who you are. And in my case, Richard Fox already had a really big already established fan base. So when we launched the book, all of his fans bought it. And same thing with the second and the third, and hopefully the fourth book, people will still buy it. And the same thing with Jeff Chaney, is he has a huge established fan base, and same thing with actually Galaxy's Edge too. The Galaxy's Edge franchise is enormous. So writing in that franchise, I'm writing to all of their fans that are going to buy the book, and then hopefully gain some new ones. But the collaboration aspect of things is you can reach way more people than you could just reach by yourself. And but you can still work on your own things. Like now I've got Edge of Valor that's coming out through Aethon in July that I worked on while I was doing the collaboration with Richard. And it took me a little while longer to write Edge of Valor because I was still working on Terra Nova 3 at the time. And I would get yelled at and cursed at by Steve and Rhett like every day.
It's also very complicated.
Yeah. It is a very complicated story. And so it took a while to make sure that everything fit correctly. And I think it worked out. I mean, I think that the time invested in the manuscript actually paid off in the long run. But already having those established fan bases and the source of income, I mean, from the different place, and it depends on what you're mountain is to go full time. Mine was very low comparatively speaking. Like some people are like, I want to make $1 million writing books. Well, that probably isn't going to happen. It can, but it probably isn't. And so if your mountain is $1 million, you're probably not going to get there. But if your mountain is $50,000, you're going to get there really a lot quicker than you will $1 million. So, but does that, I don't know if that answers your question about the collaboration aspect of it, but having those already established fan bases to write in, it allows you to make, it allows you to establish yourself as an author while making money through them, but also gaining fans because they're now reading your work because they know the other guy's franchise or the other guy's series. And so when you put out a book, hopefully when we put out Edge of Valor, people are like, oh yeah, I know that guy, I'm going to go buy his book. So that's the plan anyway.
Probably you're learning quite a bit too from that other author too, whether it's in the craft or reaching audience or marketing or whatever, you're learning from that relationship.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things that happen with in indie fiction in particular, and probably think Rhett can attest to what I'm about to say, that a lot of authors will get caught up in their own words and their own stories, and because they've never been through a traditional publishing sense, or because they've paid a freelance editor to edit their book, maybe that they didn't get the best edit or the most critical edit they could have had on their books. And so their book might not be good, right? They got a copy edit on a book that's still bad. And so it might not make any money. But if you work with a collaborator who's had an established audience already, who knows what his audience wants, for instance, Richard Fox, the number one thing you hear about his books is the pacing. All the time is the pacing. And so when I turned in Terra Nova to him, he would go through and look at the book and go, this section here can't work because it throws the pacing off in the book. And I was like, well, I don't understand what that means. And so I'd have to go back critically and look and see, what is he talking about? Why does this slow down? And then I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. That makes sense. And so you learn those different times. And even with Rhett and Steve going through their process was a little bit different than collaboration. And so I learned some different things from Rhett on how to, because I write non-linearly. So some of my scenes I write like in the beginning of the book, I might write last. And there was a particular point in the manuscript where I had a first POV change in the book, but I never set it up because I wrote it last. And so in my mind, I had already set it up, but when you read the book, it's not set up. And so Rhett was like, hey man, this is great, but it makes no sense about this scene break here. This doesn't work for me. This doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, of course it makes sense. This is what they're doing. And he's like, yeah, but you didn't set that up. You didn't earn that transition. You need to earn that transition and make this set up so it's a smooth transition. And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And so I think it's beneficial to any author to write with a collaborator or an editor that will tell you you're wrong. But then you have to actually listen to the editor too. But definitely as a collaborator, especially the junior senior collaboration where it's not like Rhett and Steve, they write into each other's words. It's a different thing than what Richard and I do. But when you have that senior partner who is making a crap ton of money off his books because the people like what he's writing, then obviously he's doing something right. So you want to learn what he's doing and take what he's saying to you while you're doing that process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. An editor, they're being paid by you. They're on your team. You know, they love your book. They want the best for your book, but it's not quite the same relationship as another author whose like finances are completely linked to the success of this book. You know, sink or swim. Also, they know their audience really well, right? They've nurtured this audience. They've been working with them maybe for years, depending on what it is. They know what they love, and they're going to tell you straight up with this book and this character that they really care about. You know, this is their heart. This is what my readers want, and this is what they do not want. we need to make this change. And from that, you're gonna learn something. Maybe you won't agree. Maybe you won't agree with the choice, and maybe it'll like hurt to have to go along with it. And maybe 10 years later, you'll still think it wasn't the choice you would have made, but you can still learn from that, from that whole experience. And that's what this is all about: testing different things, trying different things, growing, learning new things. That's right on.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I think that is a great point. And Josh brought up how the traditional publishing path is very different editing wise, and it's why I sort of always recommend authors go hybrid, because you learn from different editors, and even if you think they're wrong at the time, all of that knowledge you're gathering will help you improve as you go, even if you don't realize at all. That stuff is definitely helping you. And I'm not saying traditional editing is better than freelance, because I've had ones that were terrible, and I've had other ones that were good, and I've had freelancers that were good and freelancers that were terrible. But you kind of learn as you go, and if you work with different people, you learn from different people, because everyone has different expertise.
So a lot of what I'm hearing, like underlining everything both of you guys are saying, is you really have to be open to what others, what sort of input and knowledge they'll have, and with multiple projects, you have to be willing to, give up some of the things that you might like love to do, like, Josh with his tune blasts. You have to be able to give up the tune blasts from time to time, especially if you're one who, if you're not great at managing multiple projects, you have to be able to at least be willing to try, give up a couple of things and, talk to people. If you get into a collaboration where you're still writing another book on the side, all that knowledge you learn from your collaborator, you can put into your own personal words. But if you're not listening to that, and I mention this because I've chatted back and forth with a number of authors or writers who want to publish, and I'm trying to give them input and advice, and it's like they're not hearing what I'm saying. And then they might send a manuscript back, and I'm like, literally did not hear anything I said. It's worse than it was before. I'm sorry. So yeah, definitely, stay open. I had a point in there and I lost it.
Yeah. Working on a lot of stuff, it's a great way to challenge your comfort zone too. And because if you're writing 2 books at the same time, you're publishing them the same way, you can't have, and you want the same editor to do both books at the same time, like you're kind of putting yourself into a tough situation. It opens an opportunity where if you aren't that fast at juggling things, like maybe hybrid is the way, where you write one indie series faster and on the side you try to publish another one a different way, and you kind of learn from different editors, or you do one and you collaborate with someone else. Like I know me and Steve obviously collaborate in a very different way, but we're constantly pushing each other and like kind of setting each other twists in the story, and you have to recover and respond to that. And I think you learn from all those things. So it's a great way to not write the same sort of stuff over and over and over. You kind of are able to branch out, learn from different people, and try different things. And that's a big thing too. I know a lot of authors who are going full time right now who are working with a lot of different groups of people to try to diversify, because you never really want your income all coming from the exact same place. So there's a lot of benefits to working on more than one thing.
And you said that, and I think if I was not collaborating, I would probably not do multiple projects at the same time.
Yeah, probably.
Because the thing about the collaborations is that you have a sounding board. So like on Edge of Valor, now that Edge of Valor is done, when I'm writing Edge of Valor 2, if I have a question for Rhett or Steve, they've read it. They've read the first one. I can send them a message and say, "What do you think about this for the second book? Like, let me get your opinion on it."
Yeah.
But the first book, I couldn't do that because the first book, still nobody's read it, so nobody knows. But the first book, I had no idea what I was trying to say or what I was trying to do, and so there's no sounding board. But on a collaborative project, like with me and Richard and me and Jeff, if I get to a point in the book where I'm like, I'm stuck here, what do you think? I can send them a message and go, hey, what do you think? And it might take them a day to respond or 2 days to respond. But while I'm waiting for that, I can go and work on something else. And the thing about, you were talking about mental energy earlier and mental reset is when you're doing a collaborative project, it's not 100% mentally you, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody is helping your writing process out. So it's not where you've got to sit down and be 100% creative on this and it's all you. It's well, it just depends on the percentage wise, but I mean, it could be 70 you and 30 him or 50-50 or whatever it is, but it's not 100% you. And so you still have that other energy over here for your own stuff. And so that is why I think, because I'll be writing Edge of Valor 2 right alongside while I'm doing the Jeff Chaney project. And the Edge of Valor 2, I don't need to turn in as fast as the Jeff Chaney books. The Jeff Chaney books I'm going to be doing like every 6 weeks. Edge of Valor, it's going to take a couple of months probably to write, but that's okay because just the pace of what we're doing with both projects.
Yeah, that collaboration is a huge piece, that you have someone to talk through your ideas with and someone else generating ideas with you. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. I think Nick Cole was saying that he and Jason call every day about the Galaxy's Edge books to bounce ideas off each other. They're making those phone calls. And I think without that, I agree, it would be extremely difficult to have multiple plots going at the same time. A question came up in chat. The question is, how do you get into a collaboration? The questioner notes that a lot of collaborations are invite only, where the senior author might come to you and to ask you to be part of the project. But what if you are a junior, a more novice writer, and you'd like to approach someone? Is there an effective way of doing that, approaching an author to propose a co-writing situation?
Ooh, I've never tried that.
Bum, bum, bum.
So I will let you know in a week how that works out. The approaching another officer. I've got an idea for a collab project with another author that he doesn't know that I have an idea for a collab project with this guy, and so I am going to approach him with an idea.
Is it me? I hope it's me.
Yeah, it's definitely you. I'm gonna approach him with an idea and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I'm about 99% sure I'm going to get shot down, but I'm going to do it anyway. So the thing about the collab, like I was invited to do Richard Fox, I was invited to do Jeff Chaney, but for the Galaxy's Edge project, I actually like chased them down pretty hard, and I submitted. Let's see, we started writing Strikers War in 2018. Yeah, 2018. I finished Strikers War in 2018. So I started writing into 2017. But I was chasing a book for them in like the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, when they first started publishing. I think they were on like book 5. And I was like, I want to write with you guys. So maybe it was 2016. And so they were like, yeah, we're not at that stage yet, but we may be getting there eventually. And then finally they did say, okay, why don't you write us a pitch, and you write us a pitch and submit it, and we'll go from there. And so I did. I spent 3 days writing a pitch. They really liked it. They really, really liked the pitch, but they said, we're kind of going on a different direction. And the pitch that I gave them was basically a Han Solo-esque story, but they were going with the Order of the Centurion thing, the military sci-fi, like the strict military sci-fi deal. And so it didn't fit. And at the time they didn't tell me what it was, but that's what they were planning on doing. But because I had already pitched them, because I had already said I was really excited to try to write in their universe because I really liked it, they came back after they figured out what they were going to do with Order of the Centurion and said, hey, you pitched us to the other book. What would you think about writing mil sci-fi? And I was like, yes. So the thing with collaborations is that some of them are great, some of them are mediocre, some of them suck. And so you really have to, it's not for everybody. And your success is not always guaranteed, even if you're going in with a well-established author. It is necessary. It is invite only. But my advice to anyone that wants to get invited into an anthology is to to approach that relationship from a standpoint of, I like their writing and I'm a fan of their writing first, and I want to get to know them as a writer and engage with them as a writer and a fan and a friend and establish that baseline. And then as you build that relationship, you can approach them and say, hey, I really like your books. I think you're really, you're doing really good things here. What would you think about collaborating with a project? And here's my idea. And if they say no, they say no. But if you don't foster that relationship, if you don't build a relationship beforehand, like Nick and Jason had been on the show for almost 2 years before I pitched them a story. So I knew them already. And I knew Richard for like a year before he sent me a message, and I didn't know Jeff Chaney. I mean, I knew who he was, but I had already established myself as a collaborator when he approached me for it. But I would definitely build that baseline relationship first, and then come at it from, I have this idea for this in your universe. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's definitely sounding like, if you're going to approach that author, yeah, you need to know their universe and have an idea, give them something to get excited about that you
Right.
are really excited about, that they might not have thought about in their own universe. Right. And you're like, ooh, well, I can't steal your idea.
Yeah.
Let's talk this over a little.
Yeah.
I think what Josh said is smart, to really create that personal relationship. I mean, I'm guilty. Like, I'll cold email people trying to get a swap or for a blurb or something, and that's like a very small amount of their time. Collaborating on a book is a pretty personal and detailed relationship that's going to take a lot of talking. So I would say it's not something that you should just randomly cold email someone about, especially like an author working that fast. I mean, if you have an idea for something in an IP, like a video game IP or something, and you want to try emailing those people, I mean, that worst case scenario is you're just going to get a no. But I mean, they're sort of outside of our spheres. They're doing a different thing. They just have an IP that you like. Whereas if you're kind of in the indie author market and you're cold email indie authors asking to write in their world, I could see that rubbing some authors the wrong way if they have no idea who you are, or you just getting an automatic no. So it's definitely something I would be a little bit careful about, because that's a big ask. It's not a small amount of work to collaborate on a book together.
Well, you're right. It's not only a big ask, but then you're talking about, like, I know a couple of collaborators who thought that collaboration was going to that was going to be their thing, and they never worked together. They had never really communicated.
That too.
They just had this idea, and they're like, "Oh, let's do that together." Well, then the writing relationship didn't work. One author did not like the edits that the other author did, and then they went back and forth like several times on, I don't like that you edited this, I don't like that you edited this, I didn't like that you changed my character's voice here, I didn't like that you took out the. So it's a very personal thing. Like, it's not a marriage, it's not that legit, but it's like you really need to understand how that person works and how they think. And especially if it's a senior junior type partnership, like with Rhett and Steve, it's kind of like a 50-50, right? Like they both kind of work together to create.
I mean, at this point, we basically work on everything together, and we kind of did a lot of editing and smaller stuff first and figured that we liked each other's style and everything.
Right.
Which was big, I wouldn't just say, oh, let's write this with somebody and then just jump right into it, because you don't really know what they're going to do. So you kind of, I would have to say, feel something out. You might love this author's work and email him wanting to write in his world, and then 2 weeks into it, you hate what you're doing, and he doesn't like, and then all of a sudden your relationship with that person is ruined. And your name kind of gets dragged through the mud. So it's something you should really think about, I think, first.
If you know going in that you're going to be doing most of the writing in this collaboration, then you also know that your writing chops is going to be a big part of the puzzle. And I know, Josh, with your story, that you had already proven yourself as a writer in a number of anthologies. But my question for Rhett is, Rhett, you're a publisher. You're getting queries all the time. You're getting manuscripts coming in. So people wanting to get their book published through you, what do you look for as far as writing chops goes, like, quality of prose or whatever, before you will accept someone in your publishing house? And it would be, I think, the same kind of thinking that a senior author would have, looking at a junior author coming to them and with their writing and saying, do I want to work with this person or not? I don't know. So what would that writing look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would guess that I've never been approached by someone wanting to co-write, so I would imagine it's probably a pretty similar thing. I mean, I know we operate submission-wise pretty much like any other publisher. And the first thing that I look at is, what's in the query letter? What is the actual story? Because, that's what we're really interested in, the story. Who are the characters? And did you even send the submission right? I mean, we have a lot of work at this point, and I would say if someone can't read the page and send a submission in the right way, that they probably are going to be a pain to work with later on, kind of thing. So it can be easy to eliminate people in that way. And when you're getting a lot of submissions, that's kind of the way you have to do it. But if, you get that query letter and it sounds great. I mean, we're just science fiction and fantasy, and I won't say we're into just a certain subgenre. So it's hard to say what exactly story we're looking for. I mean, you could sort of tell in the query letter, does it have tension? Does it have great characters with, cool arcs? And it's a big thing, is an arc that a character takes. We like drastic arcs. We like them to actually be moving the plot along and be active. So those are things you could see in the query letter. And it's kind of after looking at all that stuff that you actually open up the book. And I would say in nearly every case of authors we've accepted, once we've read that query letter and think the story sounds cool, me and Steve basically message each other and decide whether we want the book or not in the first chapter. And then after that, we'll read more, but we basically know in most cases what we want. I mean, it's easy to tell, especially when you're getting that synopsis and query letter, so you know where the story is going to go. Like, I'm not looking to be surprised when I get a submission because I have that synopsis, so I kind of know where it's going. So it's basically at that point reading, seeing how their dialogue is. Is it quick? Is it realistic? Are their characters realistic? Is all the stuff working well, and are they executing? And then you could kind of extrapolate how they're going to do it from there. That's how we work. I would imagine that's how most publishers work. I think the difference is that we're not really looking for something perfect to our taste. I mean, there's stuff we have that maybe I didn't like, but Steve liked it and stuff. So we just want to publish good stuff, even though it isn't maybe something that I love, but I'm not the reader, and by working on it with a bunch of authors and running sci-fi bridge and stuff, I see a lot of what's selling. So that sort of helps, and knowing the market it helps us be able to choose what we think will sell.
Yeah, that was the greatest phone call I got from Rhett was, your story is really good. It's really nice, but mill sci-fi is not my thing. So
yeah, and I mean, yours isn't that much mill sci-fi because it's sort of detective-y, I would say. I mean, it's not detective, but it's like interviews and stuff, so it kind of has that sort of feel. But yeah, and that's a big thing. Military sci-fi is a huge seller right now. I'm not that into it, but it's something we're always looking for. And we just released one called Captain Embers, and it's probably the most detailed edit I've ever done, and kind of making it have really, really three-dimensional characters and keep all of the detail that he put into the story. And I thought it came out great. And after reading that book, I did like it. It's just not my favorite subgenre out there.
One thing I was going to say about Lauren, about the collaboration is that, so think of the collaboration is not just writing a book with somebody, okay? Because you can say, I want to collaborate with you, right? But then you really have to think about, if you publish a book with somebody, you're going to have a contract with that person. And so the typical contract you're looking at is a 7-year contract. Now I have a 7-year contract with Richard. And I'm assuming I'm going to have a 7-year contract with Jeff. We just haven't lined it out all the way yet. But so if you get a year into the 7-year contract and you're on book 2 and you guys are going like fisticuffs because you thought you could make it through these books and you can't, well, now what are you going to do? Now you have a contract. You need to figure out how to work it out. And so that's why I say building the relationship first before you do that. I mean, there's plenty of time, and there's plenty of writers out there. So, but you mentioned the anthologies, and that's a really good way to do it, because the anthologies, like I've done 3 collaborative short stories so far, and first of all, they're super fun because they're usually quick and easy stories. But it gives you a chance to do writing exercises with other writers, and so like with Casey Azell, I would come up with a plot point and she would say, yeah, but it doesn't work here because I want to do this. And then I'm like, okay, I don't care. But you have to have that, like, I don't, like, you can't be like, no, that's what I'm doing with my story. So it gives you a little bit of that humility to say, okay, let's do what you want to do. Like, I don't care. It's fine. Let's have fun with it. And yeah,
You're hearing that? Was it last week before? Don't make it precious.
yeah, don't make it precious. Don't do that.
So collaborating on a short story for an anthology would do a couple things for you. It would help you to practice being in a collaborating relationship, and also it would help you to build those writing chops and to put it out there that you can write well, because you will be published. Other authors in that anthology will be reading that story and seeing your writing, and you'll be getting that exposure too. So you'll be helping to prove yourself as a writer, which could help set you up for another bigger collaboration opportunity in the future.
Yeah, and I'll say that that's exactly why Richard asked Scott and I to do the Ember War spinoffs with him, is because we had been in Nathan Heistad's anthologies, the exploration series. So we'd done, I think at the time he asked me, I'd done 3 short stories for Nathan, and so he could see that we could start and finish a story and have good characters and have the writing, but it was actually the finishing the story that he wanted to make sure before he actually started working. So that, to your point, that is specifically why I got picked up to do the collaborations with Richard, was because of short stories.
So I know the conversation kind of drifted from managing multiple projects into collaborations, but I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it still does apply, because if collaborations are something you do want to get into, you might end up managing multiple projects. I know on Monday's show, Casey was saying she wasn't allowed to do another short story because she needed to finish this one project, and then she ended up taking one anyway, and Josh had to do it all. Being able to, and especially with the short stories, you're in, you're out. You're not going to have potential months and months, for a lot of writers in this one story. You could have your longer work and then try to submit to an anthology. Through that anthology, exactly like you were saying, other authors are going to see you. You're still working on your long project. Someone might come to you and be like, hey, you want to write with me? And be like, now you've got short stories going, you've got collaborations going, and you got your main project. So I think it all works out in the end.
Yep.
It all works together. Hey.
As long as you don't get overwhelmed, and that's one of the things that I've had to struggle with going full time, is thinking that I was going to have all this time, like 14 hours a day, to just sit in front of my computer and create and write. And that's not the case. Like, it's very hard to be creative for more than 4 or 5 hours at a time. Just, your mind gets to, just doing it for an hour, sometimes your mind gets very numb. But then having to go back and forth between those projects, it could be very taxing and mentally straining. And so, like, there are some days I'll get to like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm like, holy crap, I really need to go to sleep. Because I'm just so drained from all the creative process through the day. And then, thinking about what I need to do for the show. Do we have guests lined up? Do we have this going on? Like, I need to take the kids to preschool. Like, there's a whole bunch of other things going on. And so the multiple projects thing, like I said, if you don't need to do it, or that's just not something that you thrive on doing, like Rhett, where he says that I'd like to have these different things going on. Like he said too, he'll do editing on one project and writing on another. If I've got a project that I'm in editing stages for, I'll leave it to the afternoon. because the morning time is my most creative time. And so I'll do the more creative thing in the morning, and then in the edits, it's just fixing words that are already there. It doesn't take that much work. I say that it does, but most of the time it doesn't. Yeah, relatively speaking. But for me, the multiple projects is it's just fun for me. That's why I like doing it, and I have the time now where doing multiple projects is feasible for me, and I'm still going to be having that output of words where there's some people that work on multiple projects and don't publish but like every 6 years, because it takes them so long to write all the multiple projects. But if they just worked on one, maybe they could do it once every year, once every 2 years. So you just got to look at your output, what's feasible for you to do, and what's comfortable for you to, because it's all fun, right? Like that's the whole thing. The whole thing about writing full time is the process for me. Like, so if you're not having fun with the process and you're straining yourself to do multiple projects because it's what you think you need to do, then you're doing it absolutely the wrong way. Like, and unless you're having fun doing it and it's enjoyable for you, and that's the process that you want to do, don't worry about it. Just work on one project. Who cares?
Shadow asks, if you have time set aside for each project, you get in a groove with one and are being really productive, do you stop at the time for the next, or do you stay on the one?
I stay on the one.
Always stay on the one, yeah. You're going to write your best work when you feel that way about something.
Yeah. There are days where I go typically I try to do 1,500 on one project and 1,500 on another project. I aim for 3,000 words a day because that's typically easy for me to do. So when I go over, that's all bonus. And it's still 90,000 words a month, right? Typically speaking, 3,000 words a day is 90,000 words a month. So when you add it up, if you're just working on one project, that's still one 90,000 word novel a month. But working on two, it is what it is. But if I'm on a project and I hit 2,000 words and I'm just smashing it, and I can get to 5,000 words that day, and then I'll just go back the next day and I'll write a little bit more. I might not do double on the other project to make it even, but I'll do 400 or 500 more and just kind of try to keep the average going. But that's what I'm saying. Some days I'll get 2 or 3 days down in the hole, and you look back and you're like, ah, crap. Well, I guess I'm not working on this project today. I'll work on the other one.
Consistently, Kirsty says she'd stay on one. If you're in the flow, go with it, throw the schedule out. And
Absolutely.
She also said, I try to do just one story at a time because I thought I should, but then I realized that's never what I used to do, and I really loved writing so much. So yeah, figure out what works for you.
Absolutely. I love having a crazy schedule, so that's just me.
That's the reason why. That's your why, because you love it. You love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love just being scatterbrained all over the place.
What about you, Rhett? Any last words of wisdom?
I don't know that I have any last words of wisdom. No, I'm out of words. I would say just like we've been saying this whole time, write what you're feeling at that moment. And if you can do some other stuff alongside it, that's great. If you can't, just put out the best story you can of the thing you're focusing on.
Awesome.
I will say that, since we've been talking about collaborators for 20 or 30 minutes now, this group's is an awesome resource to find collaborators. I know I can't say specifically that Rick Partlow and Drew Avery linked up because of Keystroke Medium, but I know they linked. I can't say they did, but I can't say they didn't. Yeah. But they did, and now they're writing stories together. And they were both fans of KSM, so I know that it does happen within the community. I know that it through the show, that the show is the reason why I had all the collaborations. Absolutely, 100% is because of the show. I know that there's other people that are involved with the show right now that have other collaborations going on that they might not have had if they weren't a part of the community. So if you're looking for collaboration, you're in the right place to find it. And whether it's a short story or a novel or whatever, it'll happen. You just got to give it time. You got to be patient.
Josh, why haven't you found me a collaborator?
Well, like, so I was gonna send you an email. I was gonna send you an email the other day. I lost your email. I couldn't find it
okay.
at all. And
I'm gonna have to. I probably have to send you like 10,000 comics just to like have you find me one, man. Jeez.
oh, see, Rick just said he's collaborating on a fantasy series with Blake Peel. Hey, Rick, you can go ahead and thank me for all that. Go ahead and just say thank you, Josh, for all that stuff. That's the only time I'm gonna pat myself on the back.
All right. I was literally just gonna say, okay, well, as Josh pats himself on the back, thank you so much. Can you let our viewers and listeners know where they can find you? Obviously, Josh, everybody knows where they can find you. So, Rhett.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. It's just my name. My website is rhettbruno.com, and that's what I use mainly. Twitter, I'm RCBruno44, but I don't use Twitter as much. And yeah, no, that's basically the places you can find me, and my email's on my website if you did want to ask me any questions or anything like that. So.
Awesome. No, I'm just kidding, Josh. You can let people know where they can find you.
Whatever, everybody knows where they can find me. But Strikers War is coming out this month, and then in June, Edge of Valor will be coming out. July, July 2nd, Edge of Valor will be out. I'm really freaking nervous about that book. So Strikers War is really good. Lauren can attest to it. I've had a couple other people say that they like it. Get that book, but then really for real, get Edge of Valor, because I really want to know what people think about it in July.
Yeah,
but
Josh
everybody knows where they can.
100,000 sales. So.
Oh, I'm gonna have to buy 90,000 copies of the book.
That's okay.
Take it to the beach. That can be your 4th of July reading.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. It's very patriotic.
You can read it and say America at the same time.
All right, awesome. Well, to everyone in the live chat, thanks for hanging out with us. Let us know what you thought about the show in the comments, and show your support with the thumbs up, the subscribe button, and the bell button, so you can always know when we've got more shows going on. For Lauren Moore, I'm Kayleen Williams. Thank you for joining us on your writer's journey. We will see you next time to talk about some reading, writing, and everything in between right here on